Here we are, the dog-tired, sloppy drunk true end of the first year of NBC's Saturday Night. We're not going out on a bang so much as a bottle of the good red. Says writer Neil Levy, Kris Kristofferson was completely wasted during dress rehearsal. He couldn't say his lines, sloshing around, slurring the words. Lauren said, "Just get the biggest pot of coffee you can." According to Backstage SNL, he started drinking wine at noon and shifted to tequila at sunset, leading to some genuine questions for the second week in a row as to whether the show might be going on without a host. In the end, Kristofferson turns in a passable, if slightly slurry, performance. His wife Rita Hoola Hoops on national TV, and honestly, not a lot earth-shattering happens. It's a step up in quality from, but a lot less interesting to talk about than last week's truly disastrous feces-splosion of an episode. Kris Kristofferson was a true Renaissance man of the 1970s, and not just because he drank wine for lunch. After time as a boxer and in the Army, he moved to Nashville to pursue music. From there, he went on to have his songs recorded by the biggest names in the industry and to record Grammy-winning records, as well as to star in over 40 films. Not bad for a supposed drunk, but according to pretty much everyone who was there, Kris did not handle his week in New York for his SNL appearance very gracefully. Regardless of his behavior that week or condition on air, the show turned out to be a pleasant enough outing based on Kristofferson's natural charisma, chest hair, and musical contributions. Kristofferson comes on and mumbles something about how this is the part of the show where the host would usually jaw at the audience, but they didn't think he'd do too hot with that, so here's some lady who demanded equal time to say something. It's mildly to completely obvious he sloshed. The lady is thankfully not Emily Latella, but instead Lorraine's character Sherry, an intern who's writing a tell-all book about her time working for the SNL writers. Sherry's good as usual, but there's not a whole lot to work with here. Some of the humor would have been risque, I suppose, but it's the sort of thing that would have gotten right past the censors. After an initially unproductive go of it in Memphis, Rita Coolridge found success in LA as a background vocalist for Leon Russell, Joe Cocker, and Bob Dylan, among others. She met Kris Kristofferson at the airport in LA when both of them were on the way back to Tennessee, and Kris departed the flight early along with her in Memphis rather than continue on to his destination in Nashville. That's pretty darn romantic if you're asking me, and it was the start of a whirlwind 7-year marriage that saw them spend months in the top 40 and win several Grammys, as well as have a child together. For tonight's show, first Rita has a solo number, a sleazy little slide-inflected mid-tempo thing called Hula Hoop. Musically, it brings to mind Elvis Presley's Never Been to Spain, and I kinda like it. Good instrumentation, except the piano, which appears to have not been mic'd properly. Gilda, Lorraine, and Rita all hula hooping at the end is wonderfully wholesome, and I love every second of it. Second, we get a duet of Eddie the Eunuch, a catchy little ditty Kris apparently wrote as a diatribe at some unkind reviewer or another. I love the grittiness of his voice on this one, and it's a great blend with Rita. Finally, Kris closes the night with a rendition of I've Got a Life of My Own, without Coolidge this time. The band is great, really tight, and I love the way the mix clips and distorts, threatening to feed back at any moment. It sounds warm and fuzzy like the 70s, and it makes me feel that way too.
And now, Weekend Update with Don Pardo. Don Pardo, the official announcer of the 1976 Olympic Games.
Cut to Chevy on the phone, talking about how Pardo is a jealous loser who just wants to be on camera.
I don't know, he was an alcoholic for a while, a drug addict, a lot of misplaced rage and anger, and I think, he just wants to be on camera, and basically he's jealous.
Chevy opens with his standard catchphrase,
I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not.
To which Pardo retorts,
Nobody wants to be chubby.
I laughed way too hard at this. In this week's news, Ford is not smart, Spiro Agnew is an anti-Semite, Jimmy Hoffa is still dead and still buried underneath Teamsters headquarters, Reagan is still running against Ford. I wonder if he'd have lost to Carter. Footage of the Mars probe seems to show no evidence of life as the camera pans past a giant abandoned boot. Kristofferson delivers the advertisement in which he decries the handicap that was his education and tells you that to write hit songs like his, all you need is his book, Talk Country. You too can sound like an illiterate hick.
Don't let your education stand in the way of stardom, and don't throw away a promising career just because you can't say ain't.
Lorraine, live in a bikini for a piece on NASA. She's in Nassau instead. See? Get it? Franco scored a 10 out of 10 in the cadaver dive. Chevy says it was an upset. I know I'd have been upset if I'd had to watch a year-old corpse chucked off a diving board, that's for sure.
And now, for those of our viewers that may be growing tired of Weekend Update, I will not repeat tonight's top story. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
With that, Chase signed off Update for the last time this season, although he'd sit behind the desk at least a few more times. Stay tuned for that whole shebang. Kristofferson croons his song Help Me Make It Through the Night, while Chevy tries in vain to help musical guest and sketch wife Rita Coolidge take the ribbons from her hair as the song goes. He is not successful in this, no matter how hard he tries, and of course topples off the stage at the end and delivers the opening line. I'm gonna miss these pratfalls.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Kris is tentatively playing himself, basically, as a patient to Belushi's samurai doctor. I can immediately see why he went on to film work, because he looks and sounds like he walked out of a damn Western just standing there getting ready for a prostate exam. This material isn't a natural fit for him, but he definitely has stage and camera presence. The sketch goes mostly to plan. Somehow Chris's shaky, stumbling ass didn't get hit with a damn katana, which is a good start. It's not as strong as the Buck Henry samurai bits, but we knew it wouldn't be. There's a totally exposed female nipple visible in a photograph in this scene, by the way, and Belushi high-fives a skeleton in response. That's cute. I suppose since it was on after 10 p.m., that kind of thing got a pass. I wonder when the rules changed to discourage nudity on network TV in America. I'm gonna blame Reagan on this, as usual. Kristofferson's freeze-frame ending is hilariously unsteady, almost as if it's hard to stand completely motionless when it's after midnight and you've been drinking tequila since sunset. Garrett plays groundbreaking Black Olympian Jesse Owens, hawking Olympic medallions commemorating the last of a dying breed, the Great White Athlete. It's brief, brutal, and to the point. Garrett's usually great in these, but I wish they didn't always fall back on making nothing but race jokes whenever he's on camera. I'm almost gonna miss Chevy as Doofus Ford. Kristofferson plays the Mississippi delegate here to petition Ford about a sewage and water need or some such thing. It doesn't matter. Instead, he is met at every turn by Ford's utter incompetence. It's just an excuse for Chase to do silly clumsiness, and he does it better than just about anybody. Jane Curtin / Betty Ford comes in and saves the day by ending the impasse and the sketch. Well done, Jane. Chase and Aykroyd are cops in L.A. They immediately brutally murder Belushi for no apparent reason, then discuss where to eat dinner. Several car wrecks later, they bust into an apartment and shoot Kristofferson, yelling "freeze" and reading him his rights after he's dead. Then it's back to their never-ending discussion of where to eat. Gee guys, I think they might be trying to make some sort of a point here about some social issue, but it's so darn subtle as to be lost on me. Anyway, the traffic jam has now escalated into a full-on roadway apocalypse. Cut to the cops murdering Garrett for a minor traffic infraction. A lot of murder in this one. Anyway, in the scene, and that's how you do a freeze frame, Kris. Notice how they're not shaking? Yeah, try that. Kristofferson performs a few bars of Me and Bobby McGee, which I had not realized he wrote, then brings out the real Bobby McGee, played by Gilda. Kristofferson nearly breaks several times before she can introduce Belushi as her husband, and the two of them are pretty adorable as this couple, who they bring back several times as Larry and Bobby Farber. By the end, Belushi is irate because the song implies Kris and Gilda have been intimate. It's overly long and mostly just Belushi yelling at poor Gilda. It's still a good premise for, let's face it, a host who's tough to write for. Jane Curtin's on a blind date with her own gynecologist, the breathtakingly miscast Kristofferson. It seems like an awkward date and an awkward bit of casting, and it is. Jane has some pretty solid jokes about her things. For his part, he says he can't even remember which things hers were. Jane is relieved at first, then upset, which initially seemed a strange reaction, but I guess is an understandable way to feel. This is the closest Kristofferson gets to acting on SNL, and I think he deserves a pat on the back. Not too hard or he'll tip right over. It was a genuinely enjoyable piece, though, to give credit, and he and Jane deserve it. I picked on him a lot, but he's not awful or anything here. Garrett is Southern Representative Andrew Young talking about Jimmy Carter and Martin Luther King. He's got the cadence of a preacher politician just right. It quickly becomes apparent, though, that he's only praising Carter because he wants a place in his administration. Carter makes it clear that won't be happening, and Garrett suddenly and demonstrably loses his enthusiasm. He then wakes up in bed where his wife informs him it was all a dream. The wife is played by some random black actress. I wonder if that's because Standards had a problem with one of the white cast members doing it. Here we have a spoof of, what else, Waiting for Godot, but with Don Pardo doing doofy VO ads throughout. It's a pretty high concept to be so unapologetically stupid, bringing to mind the dippy Citizen Kane 2-bit from earlier in the season. Kristofferson seems sleepy. These last 2 episodes of the season have been pretty uneven, but luckily they'd already won at the Emmys and been renewed for a second season by this point, so short of completely melting down or cursing a blue streak on the air, they were guaranteed back. As for Kristofferson, in the end he was no worse than other non-comedian, non-actor hosts. They're usually spotty and rarely very good in the monologue, but sometimes they surprise you in sketches if the writers can come up with something that fits their personality. Thankfully, they did here. This wasn't a strong outing or anything, but it also wasn't an awkward mess like the Lasser or Welch stinkers. That's gonna do it for the first year of the show. I'm gonna do a wrap-up video for Season 1, then straight on to Season 2. The biggest change, of course, is the departure of Chevy Chase and the gradual ascendance of John Belushi and later Bill Murray. There's also the addition of future head writer Jim Downey to the team, as well as the debut of Steve Martin and a disastrous Mardi Gras special that I can't wait to cover. A genuine thanks to all of you who've subscribed and joined me during the first season, almost 100 so far, and I hope you stay tuned.